You won't believe what happened when an HOA Karen took things too far. Picture this. A woman who thought she could control everything in the neighborhood, but instead of just barking orders, she crossed a dangerous line. She actually manipulated gas lines, yes, gas lines, to cause explosions, and all because she wanted to get rid of someone she didn't like. But what she didn't know was that the person she targeted was the head of Homeland Security. This wasn't some petty neighborhood squabble, it was a full-on sabotage attempt, and it could have ended in tragedy. The kind of thing most people would only see in movies or read about in the news. But this, it was real, and it was happening right under her nose. I had to act fast, but what she didn't realize was that messing with me wasn't just a bad idea, it was a huge mistake. I had the skills, the knowledge, and most importantly, the resources to stop her. But the real question is, did I get to her in time? Was I able to uncover what she was planning before it was too late? Stick around, because things are about to get heated, and you won't want to miss how this wild story unfolds. To fully understand how we got here, you need to know a bit about the woman behind all of this. Let's call her Karen. She was the type who thought her word was law, especially when it came to the HOA. For years, she'd been the self-appointed queen of the neighborhood, enforcing every rule, no matter how trivial. People were scared of her, but I never let her push me around. That's where the tension started. She hated how I stood up for the community, even if it meant questioning some of her ridiculous rules. At first, it seemed like just another power struggle. I wasn't the only one she'd targeted. In fact, I'd heard whispers of her trying to make people's lives miserable, threatening fines, pushing for impossible standards. But no one had the guts to stand up to her until it became clear she wasn't just trying to control petty things anymore. She was getting more desperate. That's when the gas lines started acting weird. Little issues here and there, nothing big at first, but enough to raise some red flags. And then one day, I noticed something strange while walking through the neighborhood. There was a subtle smell in the air. A faint, almost undetectable scent of gas. It wasn't right. The more I looked into it, the more I realized this wasn't just a few accidents, it was something much darker. Was she really planning to hurt people just to get her way? The answers were hidden in plain sight, but I wasn't sure I was going to find them in time. The more I dug into the strange gas issues, the more I realized I was dealing with something much bigger than a petty HOA dispute. It wasn't just that Karen was out to make my life harder. This was about something dangerous. I started talking to neighbors who had complained about the gas smell, and a pattern began to emerge. It wasn't random. It seemed like the issues were being focused around certain houses, specifically the ones that had challenged Karen or dared to stand up to her. It didn't take long for me to confirm my worst fears. There were tampered gas lines near the properties that had been targeted, coincidentally, the same properties where Karen had tried to force out people who didn't fit into her perfect neighborhood. The gas had been deliberately redirected, causing small leaks. But leaks could turn into something much worse, and that thought kept me up at night. I couldn't help but wonder, was she working alone? Maybe there were other players involved, people who had the know-how to manipulate something as complex as gas lines. Or worse, was she just a puppet in a bigger game? I reached out to a few trusted contacts in the security world, but even they were hesitant. Everyone was starting to whisper about the possibility of domestic terrorism. No one wanted to say it out loud, but it was becoming clear. Someone was trying to destroy lives for personal gain. And just when I thought I was starting to piece it together, something else happened. A neighbor, someone I'd known for years, was found unconscious in her home. Gas poisoning, they said. But I couldn't shake the feeling it was more than just a freak accident. Could Karen be behind this? Or was there something deeper I was missing? I was starting to feel like I was being led down a path I wasn't ready for, but I had no choice but to keep going. The truth was out there, and it was waiting for me to uncover it. The more I dug, the more I realized that Karen wasn't acting alone. There was something about her behavior that felt off, too organized, too calculated. I started tracing the connections, not just between the gas lines and the targeted homes, but between Karen and certain individuals in the neighborhood. It wasn't just about neighborhood rules anymore. She was connected to a group of people who had far more resources than I ever imagined. One night, I received an anonymous tip. The message was short, cryptic, and unsettling. Asterisk, meet me at the old warehouse by the tracks. Everything you need to know is there. Don't trust anyone. Asterisk, I knew this was my chance to figure out the full scope of what was happening, but there was a gnawing feeling in the pit of my stomach. What if this was a trap? What if I was walking straight into her game? Still, I couldn't back down. I grabbed what I needed and headed to the warehouse, praying I wasn't making a huge mistake. As I got closer, the tension was unbearable. The air felt heavy with anticipation, and my heart raced. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind seemed amplified. I was stepping into the unknown. When I entered the warehouse, I could hear someone moving around in the shadows. The dim light flickered as I slowly approached, every step echoing in the silence. And then, from the darkness, I heard a voice. It wasn't Karen's, but I knew instantly that this was someone in her inner circle. They'd been watching me, waiting for the right moment to pull the strings tighter. I knew you'd come, the voice said, cold and calculating. But now you're too deep, and there's no way out. Just then, I heard a loud click, like a lock being turned. My pulse spiked. Was this it? Was I about to find the truth, or was this the beginning of something far more dangerous than I'd ever imagined? The voice in the shadows wasn't the only thing that made my heart race. As soon as I heard that lock click, I felt a wave of panic wash over me. The air around me seemed to shift, like the very atmosphere was conspiring against me. Then, the lights in the warehouse flickered and went out completely, leaving me in complete darkness. For a moment, I froze. My mind raced through every possibility. Was I caught in a trap? Was someone about to ambush me? The seconds felt like hours, but I stayed calm, reaching for my phone to use its light. As I turned on the flashlight, I could barely make out the outline of something, or someone, moving across the room. And then, just as quickly as it had gone dark, the lights flashed back on. But now, there was a new presence in the room. Standing before me, just a few feet away, was Karen. She looked different. There was a coldness to her expression, something almost inhuman. Her eyes met mine with a knowing stare, like she had been waiting for this moment, playing some twisted game that had far surpassed anything I could have imagined. I knew you'd figure it out, she said, her voice eerily calm. But it's too late now. Before I could respond, a loud crash echoed through the warehouse. The sound of something large, maybe a truck, slamming into the building. The walls trembled. And then I heard it. The unmistakable sound of gas valves turning on full blast, the hissing of gas filling the air. In that moment, I realized that Karen had gone beyond manipulating the gas lines. She was planning to blow up the entire warehouse. But why? What was her endgame? Why had she brought me here, only to try and destroy me in this way? I needed to think fast to get out, but with every step I took, the room seemed to close in tighter, the danger more real. This wasn't just about me anymore. I had to stop whatever she was planning before it was too late, but as I turned to make my escape, I realized something that hit me like a punch to the gut. I wasn't alone in the warehouse. There were other people here, others she had been working with, hidden in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to make their move. The stakes had just gotten higher, and now it felt like I was facing a full-blown conspiracy. But who could I trust now? My heart pounded as I darted toward the exit, but I was stopped dead in my tracks when Karen's cold laugh echoed behind me. You think you can just walk out? Not this time, she sneered, her voice cutting through the tense silence of the warehouse. The gas hissing from the valves grew louder, and I could feel the weight of every passing second as the pressure built in the air. I needed a plan, and fast, but in that moment, something inside me clicked. I remembered the backup generator hidden in the far corner of the warehouse. If I could get to it, I could cut the power, shut off the gas, and stop whatever she had set in motion. But I couldn't do it alone. I wasn't sure who, if anyone, could be trusted in that room, but there was no time to second guess. I made a run for the generator, my eyes scanning the shadows, hoping I could make it without being caught. Just as I reached it, a figure lunged from the darkness, one of Karen's hidden allies. My instincts kicked in, and I grabbed the nearest object I could find, swinging it hard to knock them back. The crash of their body hitting the floor echoed through the warehouse. I didn't stop. I punched in the override code on the generator, and the lights flickered once more before going out completely. The hissing stopped. The gas flow cut off. But just as I thought I had won, I heard a faint click, a much more ominous sound than the ones before. I whipped around to see Karen holding something small and deadly in her hand, a detonator. "You really thought you could stop me," she said, her voice tinged with fury. "This was never about just you, or even the gas. It was about control, about power, and now you're too late." Before I could react, a voice rang out from behind me. Not quite. A second figure stepped into the light, someone I hadn't expected at all. My own partner from Homeland Security. They'd been watching the whole time, playing their own game behind the scenes. Turns out, they had been working with Karen the entire time, manipulating me into thinking I was closing in on the truth, when, in fact, I was being led straight into their trap. But there was one more twist. The partner didn't hesitate. They moved quickly, disarming Karen before she could hit the button. The look of betrayal in Karen's eyes was almost palpable as she was cuffed and taken away, her plot unraveling in the blink of an eye. I stood there, trying to process everything. The warehouse, the gas, the manipulations. It had all been part of a much bigger scheme than I'd ever realized. My own team had been compromised, and I had no idea who I could trust anymore. As the authorities arrived to clean up, I couldn't shake the feeling that the real story was still out there. Karen and my partner weren't the only players in this game. Someone somewhere was still pulling strings, and I had the sinking feeling that this was far from over. In the aftermath, the truth slowly came to light. Karen was arrested, but it wasn't just for the gas sabotage. She was tied to a larger network of corruption and criminal activity. The manipulation of gas lines was only the tip of the iceberg. Her real plan had been to disrupt local infrastructure, creating fear and instability to gain political power. My partner, the one I had trusted, was arrested too. It turned out they'd been working with Karen for years, using me as a pawn in their game. The authorities took control of the situation, and the neighborhood slowly returned to normal, though it felt like a long road to recovery. People who had once feared Karen now stood stronger together, realizing how close they had come to disaster. I'd done my part, but the damage left behind wasn't just physical, it was psychological too. Trust had been broken, not just by Karen, but by someone I thought I could count on. I walked away from the warehouse that night knowing one thing for sure: no matter how dark the world may get, there are always people out there ready to stand up for what's right. But the most important lesson: never underestimate the power of community, and never trust too easily. The world is full of hidden dangers, but it's also full of unexpected heroes.